district heating and cooling. And in the January next year, we will be talking about starting energy communities. So really going a bit beyond simply the physical connections, I would say, but also the organization around it. And finally, in April 2022, we will have a fourth session, the focus of which will be determined later on, depending on the interests and the requests as well from this group. So 1 year of sessions that you are all invited for, that I hope will inspire you. And finally, of course, explanation about we, the group that is setting up this series of sessions. My colleague Nathan will go into more detail after the break, but we is the R-ACES Consortium, a group of organizations from throughout Europe that are really trying to actively promote ecoregions, to actively promote the concept of energy collaboration across the continent. And the reason that we're doing this is, it can be the next slide, Krista. The reason that we're doing this is the very simple observation that industry represents a full quarter of energy demand on our continent, but only 16% of that demand is being met by renewable energy. So we really need to step up here to move beyond the 16%. Ursula von der Leyen launched the European Green Deal a couple of months ago. In that Green Deal, she clearly stated, and she put forward the ambition that CO2 should be reduced by 55%. Now, that is not something that's going to happen by just continuing on the standard energy efficiency programs, continuing to reap the low-hanging fruit that we have been reaping for the past 10 to 15 years. We really need a step change in how we approach energy efficiency and CO2 reduction, especially in the industry. So the focus should be on a more structural solution, a more systemic solution, in which we're not only looking at simply saving energy on one side, but really optimizing an entire energy system, which consists of the industrial side, of course, given its weight in total energy consumption, but it takes into account its linkages to the rest of the environment, to the other areas around it. And that's why we focus to this extent on energy cooperation. We want industrial sites to be the hub in economic terms, which they already are, but also the hub in energy terms. They should become clusters, basic clusters that can be linked, that can become nodes in a future energy system and be the basis for a far more sustainable, a far more viable system of the future. As I said, today, the focus will be on the aspect of the district heating and cooling networks, and especially the advanced district heating and cooling networks. We will hear from 3 speakers from south to north across the continent that will introduce us, first of all, to using waste heat from data centers in the district heating and cooling systems. Luca Rigoni will talk about his experience in the area of Milan, Bergamo, in northern Italy, to that extent. Afterwards, we're moving north to Belgium, where Gilles Quinget will show the same thing, waste heat, this time from steelworks that is being used or will be used to heat a nearby town. And finally, we're moving up north to Denmark, where people have been familiar with district heating and cooling since Stone Age, basically, and we'll show how the really advanced projects in the region of Nyborg could be an example for the rest of Europe to follow. After that, there's a short bathroom break, 5 minutes, and then we will continue with a very brief overview of what this R-ACES project, this group of people that is actually bringing this seminar series to you, is actually all about, to round it off with about 30 minutes of discussion that we can so that we can look into the pros and cons what have been presented. Maybe 2 final remarks before we really set off. One is that we will be very strict on timing, so each speaker will have 20 minutes to present their case. If we're running out of time, we will indicate, so please do stick to the time. Second small remark, the case in Italy, I was mistaken to say it was about data centers. It's about using waste heat, but not of data centers. So, but Luca The floor is all yours to set me.
Thanks. Not a big issue anyway. I hope that we will be presenting data center heat recovery soon. So we are working on it. So I don't want to spoil it. Therefore, okay, we'll talk definitely later. So my name is Luca Rigoni. I'm the CEO and president of E2E Calore Servizi. E2E is I'm proudly saying is the biggest heat. Let's say district heating and cooling operator in Italy, obviously. And I don't want to hear anybody say that we are second, okay? So we are the largest. We serve basically the territory and the cities of Milano, Brescia, and Bergamo. We have around 1,000 kilometers of pipe installed, and we deliver about 2.2 terawatt hours of energy. So we can I don't know if you can move on with the slides. So okay, thanks. So quickly about the topic is hot, I would say, especially talking about district heating. So we are now in a process that we have to fight against obviously the climate changes. We have already increased our temperature of one degrees, and we have to fight against the carbonization of the sector. Therefore, okay, district heating can play obviously a very important role, especially because really it allows a flexibility of the energy system, allowing especially the recovery of waste heat, which is already available in the territory and is definitely not used. Therefore, obviously, district heating plays an important role in that part. We can move on. Okay, obviously, the transition passed through the fourth generation district heating, which is also the one applied by E2E. And is really the major, let's say, the major role player in the recovery of the waste heat. Moving on to the next slide. Okay, this is the definition. I would not spend a lot of time on that. Definitely, the fourth generation is really the key point of this unity of this system is really to allow higher efficiency, higher flexibility, and also the facility to integrate the renewables and the waste heat into the district heating. And also we are moving in that direction, and you will see from some cases that I'm going to present in the next minute. Okay, next slide. I'm coming to this very quickly about a result of the Stratego project, which was presented and developed in 2016. So this is a study which have a scope to develop a low carbon heating and cooling strategy based on a heat density, let's say, concept. So this study mapped a certain area, especially we have quite a deep mapping of the area where we have our network installed, so in Milano, Brescia, and Bergamo. And through that, it is quite interesting to really mark the fact that the target of this scope was, by the way, also to establish or evaluate the potential of the waste heat available in the territory. Move to the next slide, please. So coming from that, you will see the numbers are quite impressive. So the result of the study says that we have, in terms of, in Italy, in terms of industrial excess, around 95 terawatt hour per year to be, let's say, which are now dissipated in the atmosphere, but can be recovered. So is really a large, if you have, let's say, some knowledge of the numbers, is really a huge flow of waste heat which is available, and just some of this heat is really ready to be grabbed. Therefore, okay, this study gives us some sort of a guideline or a sort of a light in the night where we should really focus our direction in order to try to recover this heat. So coming to the next slide. So our system currently is already fed by a lot of different technologies. So starting from the thermal storages, from solar thermal, from geothermy, from really recovery from industrial and production cascade, from waste to energy unit, and also we also couple the district heating with the district cooling. So our system is already designed in order to accommodate all these contributions. Coming to the next slide. And this is the famous share. So as Peter was presenting at the beginning, the percentage of renewable is still low, and we have to aim to a higher, let's say, share. Our, let's say, system, our district heating and cooling system is, let's say, all our network are considered as efficient network. So in terms really according to the definition set by the law. So because of this, you see the share that we have in our network allows us to be, let's say, quite efficient, and we are able to recover more than 70% on the total heat delivered through, let's say, renewable, through CHP and waste heat. And this is, as I said, is common on all the territories. Coming to the next slide. So now let's see the cases which allows this high percentage of heat recovered above the, let's say, the heat distributed to our network. The first one is a project that we are now delivering in Bergamo. Bergamo is the third biggest city in Lombardy and one of the biggest in Italy. So we have set an agreement with REA. REA is a waste to energy producers. So we have set this contract which says that we can recover all the capacity they have currently in terms of waste heat and deliver this to the district heating. So the plant is already, let's say, in operation since many years, but they don't recover any heat. So they have an air condenser, as it can be read. They have an air condenser, and they basically discharge all the heat to the atmosphere. So through this agreement, we are able now with the new steam tail, so we have really a new part of the plant installed and built, we are able to recover all the heat that is now condensed to the air. And in order to do this, we have to install a 5-kilometer pipeline routing the heat from the production center to the city of Bergamo, which is not far away, as it can be seen. Another important thing is that in order to avoid or in order to keep the production without any, let's say, constraint or without any interruption, we are installing a big heat storage into a plant which is owned by us, in order to be able really to cut all the peaks and allow the producer a continuous, let's say, to the city district heating. We can move to the next slide. Okay, so the project, basically the value of the project is around 15 million euro in all. And the major, let's say, KPIs are the fact that we will be able to increase 50% the heat available for the district heating in the whole city of Bergamo because of this heat recovery. we are going to install 22 kilometers of pipe in the city, and we are going to increase around 11,000 flats served because of this recovery. The major numbers is, as I said, 15,000 tons per year is the saving on the CO2 emission. And we are going to recover more than 90 gigawatt hour per year. You see the equivalence on the, let's say, in the lower part of the slide. Okay, we can move. Okay, this is the second one, is again an industrial recovery. This is a heat recovery from a steel mill. So we are going to recover 11 megawatt in terms of power, which will be around 27 gigawatt hour in terms of energy, with a CO2 cut of around 5.6 kiloton per year. Is really a showcase project, this one, because we are really recovering the heat as it is without any lift. So we're recovering 90 degrees flow without making any, let's say, lift to a higher temperature. And we are really pumping this heat at this temperature level into our district heating system as it is. The project was, let's say, considered the fact to install, again, 1.2 kilometers of new district heating pipes to connect this steel mill, and a big pumping station in order to balance this flow into the network. So this is the real challenge, because our network is at 120 degrees. And because of this, we are really trying, if you remember the first slide, moving to a lower temperature network in order to really to push on this type of recovery, which are normally at a lower temperature. You can move to the next slide. Okay, so this is another case with a steel mill. This is a project that is going to start very, very soon. We are just hosting, let's say, the heat as the district heating provider, but the project is run by Turboden, who is the solution provider, by Ori Martin, which is the owner of the steel mill, and then we have other three companies, Cogen, RINA, and CSMT, part of the consortium. Move to the next slide. This is I can see it. Okay, now I see it. Okay, so this is again a heat recovery from this steel mill factory, where instead, and this is different from the previous one I have shown you. Here we need a lift of the fluid that we are let's say the flow that we are recovering. In this case, we are lifting from the let's say the temperature of the cooling system will be lifted through a large heat pump from 70 degrees to 95 degrees. And then again, with another system, we are lifting up to the 120 degrees, which is the temperature of the district heating network connected to this steel mill. But the concept is again still the same. So we are really recovering the waste heat used to cool the process of the steel production, and instead of throwing this again away through a cooling towers, we are recovering it and let's say increasing the temperature in order to allow a perfect integration into our system. You can move on. Yeah, as I said, okay, these are the major let's say KPIs. So we are talking about of 6 megawatt power in, and in this case, so we are, let's say, lifting up to 120 degrees. The important thing is that we are covering and recovering nearly 85% of the heat produced by this steel making production process. So we are really reducing to a minimum the waste heat which is left to the ambient. Okay, you can move on. Okay, all this kind of, let's say, project requires anyway a flexibility from our side. The flexibility, as I was telling you before, it can be done through a water storage, let's say, a heat storage. The heat storage is really a key component in order not to create any concern or any interruption to the industrial process which is above our recovery. And this is the reason why we are really investing a lot of money in erecting new heat storages in all our network. We have selected an atmosphere heat storage concept, which means that we will be storing at a temperature of 95 maximum degrees, because again, our aim is really to reduce as much as we can the network temperature. And really we are investing a lot in order to increase the capacity of storage. Consider that now in Brescia, we are erecting 3 water storages, which in total will have the capacity around 50% of the overall volume of the network in Brescia. And in Brescia, our network is quite spread. We are talking about 670, 700, let's say, kilometer of pipe in the whole city. So really, we are increasing our capacity a lot. Then I come to the last case very quickly, which is quite interesting. So this is a really geothermal recovery, heat recovery. In Milano, we have some wells which are intended to control the water level of the underground water, and are, let's say, and the aim of these wells is really to pump water from the underground and put it into a river. And these pumps flows every day, 24 hours per day. So we have a huge flow of water thrown away without making any energy recovery. So the idea is really to try to use a part of this flow and use it as a geothermal sink. And we are now under execution of this project, which is again financed by Reward It, by the UE community. And we hope to present the result of this in the next meeting, because we are really now in the designing phase and we are starting up with this new project. And this is really I think this is the last one. So thanks for the time that you have dedicated me.
And thanks for keeping it so perfectly, Luca. This is an absolutely very interesting overview, I think. We do have time if there's one question from the public, but it should only be one then to take it now. Otherwise, we can take it in the discussion anyhow afterwards. So if anyone feels like answering one question, please do so.
In the meantime, you see our strategy, so our goal.
Great one. Okay, in that case, I take it that we can have discussion afterwards. Thanks a lot, Luca. As I said, very interesting overview. Very clear, covered all aspects, I think, of district heating and cooling. And I'm really curious to hear what Gilles is going to tell us about the case in Ghent, in Belgium, and how it compares to what we've seen in Bergamo.
Thank you, Peter, for the introduction. Indeed, a very interesting presentation by Luca. He has a lot of networks already in the ground. Here in Zaalzaten, we still have to start, so we have 0 meters of district heating in the ground as so far. My name is Gilles Kinget. I work at the Regional Development Agency of East Flanders, one of the 5 provinces in Flanders. and Flanders is one of the 3 regions in Belgium. So that's a complex introduction. As POM East Vlaanderen, regional development East Vlaanderen, we try to be a catalyst within the energy transition. We initiate these projects. The basic idea is to couple supply and demand of heat. So in this sense, we have a lot of overlap with the R-ACES project and also a shared interest. The map that you see here, the previous map, sorry, does not only indicate the complex political structure of Belgium. Brussels is the white dot, so the data is missing. This is data from Flanders, and it shows the biggest heat demand on the level of companies. So the darker the dot, the higher the energy intensity. So you have Antwerp right above, and then we will focus on the region of Ghent and Zelzate, which is in the cluster of North Seaport. Ghent is at the south, Zelzate in the middle between Ghent and Terneuzen. And right in between Zelzate and Ghent is the big company ArcelorMittal. Just to give you an idea, Zelzate has, I think, 12,000 inhabitants. Ghent has 280,000 inhabitants. Zelzate is really, let's say, a good example of many of our small municipalities in the region. They only have, for instance, one person that is responsible for all the things concerning climate, concerning energy transition. So they are really underfinanced, and they don't have enough staff to really give implementation to the Covenant of Mayor contract that they do signed. ArcelorMittal, on the other hand, and I think you can go to the next slide, is really a very large company, 850 hectares. I think it's even bigger than the municipality of Zelzate. They are a fully integrated steel manufacturer. So they start from the resources, from the ores, just up until the steel end products. 3/4 of the CO2 emissions of Ghent are caused by ArcelorMittal. So it's really key of their process, of course. They are very carbon intensive. And the vision of ArcelorMittal is to treat carbon not only as a fuel, but also really as a resource. And they have a lot of projects initiated, also financed by Europe, in which they try to make nice products out of these carbon emissions that they have. Peter was talking about industrial clusters. Well, I think ArcelorMittal is a cluster on itself. So what we try to do here is to combine these two, the big giant ArcelorMittal and the small Zelzate, and then you could think of the next image, David versus Goliath. We as an energy broker and a public authority regional, we try to help Zelzate to level out with this big giant, but I think this would give you a wrong starting position, using this image as a conflict between two parties. If you hold on to this, you would drastically limit, I think, the chances for a success due to a lack of trust. So rather, I would give the next image, which is, I think, very crucial. Trust. Might sound a bit silly, but I really would like to bring this forward to start off as a way of seeing things. As an independent semi-governmental organization, we really approached this case with open hands, and we positioned ourselves very vulnerable and trusting. And I think it's a very good approach to start with these cases. Both of these are key ingredients to build a team around this case, around this opportunity. And I do believe in a small team of people and organizations that are really dedicated and open and sharing in a sharing culture. So if you don't have that, I would suggest go and build it. In the following next slides, I'll try to briefly go through the process that we've done in ArcelorMittal connected to Zelzate. And afterwards, I'll discuss some failures and successes, some of which might be useful for your cases, especially the cases that are starting from scratch. So that's also what we've done here. We don't have an existing district heating network like we see in Milano. And the networks that we have in Flanders are fed by waste incineration plants. So the experience is let's say, building up, but still limited. Let's start. Let's say the opening to this case was the question of ArcelorMittal to build a new big installation. So they need a permit for this. And the city of Ghent approved the permit, but they also had some conditions. And one of them was for ArcelorMittal to really map their waste heat and opportunities for this waste heat to be linked with customers nearby. So that was really the impulse, and that's where we departed. We had some exploratory conversations very soon with some parties on Flemish level, provincial level, but also the municipality of Zelzate and ArcelorMittal itself. And from time to time, we also involved some of the major developers of heat networks, really to have a sort of ping pong in an early stage to screen the viability of what we were saying and sometimes also promising. Next slide. So after this first phase and getting to know each other, try to build this confidence, we started collecting data. I think that's, of course, the main ingredient. You cannot build a heating network if you don't have the demand for heat. So that's what we've done here. The biggest dot is a psychiatric centrum, Saint-Jean-Baptiste, which is very close to ArcelorMittal, which is just on the south. You can see some contours of their buildings approaching there. Next slide, please. After we've collected the data, we asked an engineering company to put out a feasibility study. So we said, try to make the dimensioning of the pipes, the trajectories, and here you can see some key figures also about the external heat delivery, because ArcelorMittal, next to this feasibility study, also did an internal study to see what sources can be used to deliver this heat network, at what temperatures and at what cost. And that's when they come up with two, let's say, starting points, 2 times 10 megawatts of the place where they squeeze, let's say, the big steel, hot steel slabs, they call it, to cool these rollers. Otherwise, they would also melt. So that we had our source, 2 times 10 megawatts. We had also the demand for heat mapped, so we could really start talking to these customers, to the psychiatric centrum, and also make Zelzate, the municipality Zelzate, ready to come up with more heat demand, because as you can see, it's quite limited. So making the bridge is capex very intensive, but the demand for heat is rather limited. So they have to actively steer also in having new real estate developments situated along the red route to have a higher linear heat density and a higher number of clients, of course. After these feasibility studies and this initial, let's say, few steps, the next step was to go to the public, to external, and have a sort of moment in which we communicated all the boundaries and conditions of the parties that were involved. For instance, the psychiatric centrum, they really wanted 100% certainty of heat delivery, which is of course logic. ArcelorMittal, they didn't want to invest themselves in the heating network, so they want third-party financing. And also, quite an interesting one, they also want an off-balance solution. So they don't want the pipes to enter their books, let's say. And coupled to that, they have to, next to internal delivery of heat, they also had to deliver heat to other parties. So that's some blocks that were coming together and bringing this in a stream, in a faster way of moving. Now, currently, we are at the stage that ArcelorMittal will launch a request for quotation, and some parties that were on the info moment are in the running to, let's say, execute this whole plan. So what you see here is only a part of the heating network. Also on site, so to the south, there is a few kilometers of network that is planned. Let me turn now to some failures that we've encountered, because I think these can be most interesting, and also the obstacles that we've encountered. I think sharing the successes is important, but from failures we might learn equally much. One of the things that I had to be aware of is try to solve the case too much on your own and start to make calculations without a real mandate from the parties involved. So I would suggest really get a clear mandate from the parties involved before you go take your actions. An obstacle that we had, of course, is fragmented information. So only, they don't, let's see, we say it in Belgium, I don't know if it's English as well, let's see the back of your tongue. So the information that came in from Arcelor was really fragmented and sometimes not coherent. So it's all about this trust, I think, and start putting out the information first, then it will come from them. And like this, you can have a ping pong and you can get started. And next one is, and I think this counts for many companies, bigger companies especially, they have a whole portfolio of projects that are in the running, and they also have limited resources. So your project is only one of the possible horses on which they can bet. So in that sense, you really have to make clear what they can benefit from and how it can contribute to their internal goal settings. ArcelorMittal wants to be CO2 neutral or carbon neutral by 2050. So that helps. They are really making nice progress in that sense. And coupled to this one, I think it's very important to have a go or a no-go from the higher echelons, so from the management level, already in the early stage of your idea. If not, you might just invest energy and resources in a case that wouldn't get through anyway. So really get that confirmation quite early in the process. That's an important one. And one specifically to this case is the issue of creating a lock-in. So we have the heat from Arcelor and it would go to the psychiatric centrum, the first big client. An issue here would be if you make the pipe too small, that you make delivery to Zelzat in a later phase would become impossible. But of course, the uncertainties grow towards Zelzate, not only through demand, but also obstacles with the highway that will be transferred. So there are some uncertainties there. So it's an investment in a bigger pipe without real, let's say, guarantees for a return. So that's the place I think where our organization can really help, not by subsidy, but really by investing or promising to invest in parts of this development in a minority participation. Subsidies are also good, of course. 30% of the capex can be or will be subsidized by the Flemish government. So this has to do with the low gas prices in Belgium. If you have to compete with these, laying a distribution network of heating is quite hard. Voila, I think the last obstacle was the limited staff in the municipality of Zelzate, but I already covered that. So that is an obstacle for a proactive attitude from the city, which is actually very important to have some guarantees for the heat demand, which is the key of rolling out a heating network. And that accounts also for other municipalities in our region, and I guess also in your regions. I think those were the most, let's say, important obstacles that I've noted here today. I'm curious to your questions or any suggestions.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Gilles. This is one question from my side. What's the exact status right now of the project? So what stage are you in?
ArcelorMittal Ghent is putting out the request for quotation. So it's a design, build, maintain, part financing and operate all together. And they are in conversation with different parties, but they will now officially put out these requests for quotation.
So that's for the network on their side. It's not for the overall network all the way to Zelzate.
It's for the network on their side, the network to psychiatric center, and also it's within these RFQ, they will implement the possibility to deliver to Zelzate as well. So ArcelorMittal is really thinking with us, they have to deliver and let grow the network towards Zelzate. So that's a positive thing.
Yeah. I see another question here from Emilia, who's asking what happens with the waste heat outside the heating season.
The way it's treated now, up until today, ArcelorMittal has to cool away 2 times 10 megawatts. So I guess in the summer they will have to do this partially, even though we have a heating network. So indeed there is a real bathtub curve. So in the summer we still have this heat. I don't know if they will, I hope, and I think the last presentation was quite interesting if they would integrate a buffer, but I don't know if seasonal buffer is feasible in this case, but definitely this will be looked after.
Yeah, there's a question here as well. Can you store it? Not right now, as I understand from your presentation. Okay, any?
That came into me in a private chat, but I think this can be shared because it's a presentation. And this is, the question is, wait, now how many people work at the steel company and what are their other actions for carbon neutrality?
At the steel company in Belgium, I believe there are 5,000 people, but at the site of ArcelorMittal Ghent itself, I don't know the figures, but I think it could be 1,000, more than 1,000 for sure. Yeah. What was the other question?
What other actions are they undertaking for CO2 reduction?
Oh, they are taking a lot, but 2 interesting projects that I know of is Tilanol and also the CCU hub story, in which they will use the CO2 to make methanol together with green hydrogen. So they will convert it into methanol, green methanol.
That's great. If there are any more questions, please keep them for discussion afterwards, because it's 10 to 4, so it's about time to move to the next presentation. Gilles, thanks a lot for giving us a little bit of insight on how projects can get started. I hope we can get back to it during the discussion. I give the floor to Mogens Michael from Nyborg, as I said, from Denmark, so one of the front runners when it comes to district heating and cooling, and he's very well positioned to give us an overview of district heating projects going on in southern Denmark right now. There you go, Mogens Michael.
Thank you very much, and hello to everyone, and thanks for the introduction. Actually, I started in Nyborg only 1 month ago in my position as Head of Sustainable Development, but I've been cooperating with Nyborg for a number of years in my previous position as a consultant on the island of Fyn on sustainability. So I have a small video that I couldn't send to you, so therefore I was thinking that I would share my screen. And let me see if that works.
Yes.
Do you get my screen now?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So just to give you a short introduction to where you all know the map of Europe and Denmark, and actually the red dot is right on Fyn, which is the region that we are positioned. Nyborg municipality is a small municipality of 280 square kilometers. It's the one side of the Great Built Bridge, if you know that one. With a population of 32,000, and out of which the 20,000 live in Nyborg city. And our main businesses are industry and agriculture and education. So that's just to zoom in and give you an impression on where we are. It's also a municipality. Well, I started 1 month ago, but as I said, I've been cooperating with Nyborg for a number of years, and it has a strong international commitment. It has signed the Covenant of Mayors. We're part of the city's Race to Zero. We were finalists in the European Green Leaf Award in this year. We didn't win it, unfortunately. Recently we've also entered a national process called DK 2020, which is building climate action plans along the criteria of the C40 cities concept. If you know that, I'll come back to that. And then last but not least, we have also a common green vision on the island of Fyn, where we are 10 municipalities that has just been approved by the municipalities, and which contains climate goals and ambitions that are a little stronger than even the national Danish goals for climate reduction. So all of these international engagements, we embed our sustainability in our local policies and our local plans. So a number of different policies and plans where we embed the climate goals and other sustainability goals. I guess what is our main contribution today is actually a historic use of district surplus heat from industries in our district heating. As already mentioned, we have in Denmark a long tradition of district heating, and I think that's not at all particular for Nyborg, but what is particular is that 96% of all of the houses in the city of Nyborg, they are heated by the surplus from roughly 2 companies in our municipality. So that means actually that 2 companies, they heat 2/3 of the population of the municipality of Nyborg. It requires a long net of pipes, obviously, and you've already been into that, the previous speakers. Very interesting presentations, by the way, thank you. You can't get heat distributed without pipes, and there is a limit to how far you can actually distributed, and you should, as mentioned by the previous speaker, you should really care for the size of your pipes if you want to extend your district heating later on. So the surplus heat comes from roughly 2 companies, as I said. The one is Fortum. Well, now it's owned by Fortum, but it was built as actually a public company back in the 70s. That was, and they're still taking care of hazardous wastes from all over Europe and actually all over the world. It's transported to this plant where it's burned, and a lot of the wastes are actually fuels themselves, or they are of course burned by, or how do you say it, destroyed by other means and by use of other fuels. So this is one of the main, and even back in the 70s, wise people, they built the system so that the surplus heat from this plant, sorry, it could be used in the district heating. And then the other company is Koppers, which is a tar, which is an oil product, actually, a tar facility. These 2 companies, they supply the 96%. So the city of Nyborg actually only has a minor capacity of heat production as a reserve and as a peak to take care in the deep winters, but the rest is imported from these 2 companies. And also, as mentioned by one of the previous speakers, it's a trade, sort of. It's the companies are not today at all involved in the public authority or the public municipality, so it's simply shifted as a commodity in the process. I had a video that I wanted to show you, but I think it somehow went away. I think because I sent it one edition to you without the video. I think I opened that one. So let's stay this way, and maybe if we have time, we can show the video by the end. It roughly explains the same story and shows you the pipes and sort of things, but I think that's okay. We have so much surplus heat in Nyborg that we actually have been able to extend the district heating into an industrial area a little out of town. And also talking about the challenges, I was in my previous position a little involved in this extension of the district heating. And it's, even though it's in Denmark, it's not so that you can just extend the district heating as you like. You need, of course, a critical number of customers to go in on the idea before you can start sending out the pipes and do the investments. And by tradition, the companies are heated by oil or by gas, which they might even also use in their own production and so on. So it was quite a job to persuade enough companies to join in on this. But as climate and energy consumption is high on the agenda also in the companies, we assisted Nyborg actually in my previous position, and we succeeded to get enough on board. And I think the target was, the target was at least 40 new customers out of the 100 companies in the industrial area. I'm not up to date at this moment on the final number of customers, but the extension has been started and is on its way. In terms of the curiosity, maybe a more kind of thing, we're also thinking of using some of the still excess heat to build a heated pool in the harbor on the coast, where the water could be +6 to 8 degrees compared to the surrounding natural water. So this is one of the plans that are being dealt with right now, which could make use, although it's a little extensive use, but make use of some of the surplus heat that we still have. And I'm not totally into this, but maybe, as also mentioned earlier, maybe this could especially be during the summertime. In terms of the project, we actually had another small action involving students. I mentioned to you that we're an education town. We engaged with the local high school, which has a study, or how do you say that? They have a line of students that work with building new companies. So we thought, why not use the innovation capacity amongst the students? And we sort of challenged them, how can we use the existing overshoot of heat that we're still not using? So we haven't, the course hasn't been run yet. It will be this autumn, but it might give us some new ideas, and at least it will give them some impression of what is going on in Nyborg and what is dealt with the excess heat. As I mentioned to you, we also entered the DK 2020, which is a movement of more than 40 municipalities at the moment in Denmark, out of the I think 92 or 93 municipalities who have engaged in this process of building a climate action plan according to the C40 cities framework. The C40 is a gathering of some of the largest cities of the world, but also including Copenhagen and others, that have agreed on a specific framework for climate action plans that you can be certified in. And the basics are that you have to acknowledge the Paris Agreement and plan for climate neutral in 2050. And you have to include both climate mitigation and adaptation, because we know that there are climate changes and there are also changes in the water circulation. And you have to involve relevant stakeholders. And this is, I think, where it comes in that we are also planning to build a stronger, you could call it ecoregion, and cooperation with our companies in the municipality. We look at our possibilities and limitations as a municipality. And first of all, we look at our own business. The municipality is the largest house owner or building owner in the municipality, in the area of the municipality. So we run a lot of institutions and buildings, schools, kindergartens. So this is the first level where, of course, we can have some climate mitigation. The second level is that we have, the facilities, the public facilities that we almost entirely own in Nyborg. So we have a very strong position there, but they built the frames for both the citizens and for the companies on their climate and their energy agenda. And then last but not least, of course, our ambition is to facilitate the climate actions amongst both citizens and the corporations. The trick is, of course, that we have the strongest power to make changes at the lower level, but the possibility and the potential for CO2 reductions is by far the largest in the upper level, where we have the lowest power. So we can only try to facilitate this process. And this is what we're going to build in the coming years. So really just to sum up on this short presentation, partnership is the key. We have a very strong dialogue with our companies, of course, but we're going to have a more targeted dialogue with them on climate actions and CO2 reductions and renewable energy consumption. So this was just a short, really a short introduction to a solution that has been here for many years and to some extent has been forgotten by municipalities, that actually most of Nyborg, all of Nyborg is heated by surplus heat from these companies.
Well, that's one thing that we, at least in Belgium, can only dream of.
Yeah.
Everything is going to be heated with waste heat. So Maurice, Michael, if you do find the presentation with the video, feel free, because we got 4 minutes left for that.
Okay.
In the meantime, there's at least one question that links.
Yeah, I think I'd rather have a discussion than questions. It would be nicer.
Yeah, good. Then there's one main question. The entire town depends on 2 companies for its heating. What if ever one of those 2 companies went away? Or
yeah,
closed?
it's a really good question, and I've met the argument. I've been working in my previous position also with the surplus heat. I've met the argument before. We would have a new situation. I think there's no plan B, because the investment, we would have to come up with investments in that case. But since these 2 companies have been there for many years and they're still developing, and since also they, especially Fortum, is handling a very important problem worldwide, we feel that we are on solid ground. But if they were closing, we would have to come up with investments. And the way it works today in Denmark, a lot of local district heat companies, they turn into green power. So we would definitely have to look into most likely very big heat pumps, since biomass is also sort of not, on the long run, not regarded as a sustainable solution in Denmark. I heard about an investigation in Sweden on the same question, and they made some, I can't remember the exact statistics, but it's turned out from the more systematic investigation in Sweden that it was very, very rare that you came up, that it became a problem, that the companies that delivered the heat, they were actually closing. So maybe to some extent it's more a theoretical problem, really.
Yeah, good.
But it's an interesting issue, and I'm absolutely sure that it puzzles many in this regard.
Yeah. Other questions at this point in time?
I have maybe a small question. A similar question, but then on the demand side, is it possible for people to choose their own individual solution and disconnect from the grid? And does that happen a lot, or is the district heating network the best alternative by far?
The legislation was actually changed just recently in Denmark, so that you're not anymore obliged to be connected to the local heat system. I think to disconnect from the local heat system is an unthinkable solution, since the investment has been made and it's very convenient. So I think I haven't heard of anyone who would disconnect from the local heat system. But it is, this new regulation is a challenge in widening the or extending the local district heating, especially because in these years a lot of people, they turn into single heat pumps, and this development sort of goes a little fast. And we're actually planning, I didn't mention that, but we're planning to extend the local district heating to some of the villages nearby. and in this way also extend and increase the use of our surplus heat. But it requires that we get there with our plans before they have all shifted to single heat pumps.
Yeah.
So there is some challenges in this actually in Denmark, and I can't really explain to you why the legislation was changed in this way.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
I would say then we're going to have a 5-minute bathroom break so that no one is feeling uncomfortable or has some urgencies to take care of afterwards. We will, after the break, take a few minutes to tell you a few things more about the R-ACES project and how it is actually working to support projects and municipalities that you have seen and others around Europe. And after that, we will have an interactive discussion. So we prepared one very nice with a Mentimeter tool. So I would say do stay with us for discussion as well, because that's going to be really worthwhile. And we'll see each other again at 4:15 exactly. So welcome back, everyone, from the bathroom break. I see, yeah, that one person has left the meeting, but for all the others, we're back here, as I said, with a brief overview of what the R-ACES project actually offers. And it's a pretty nice one, because I saw that on this call, we've got people at least from the Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, Italy, Denmark, and probably some other countries as well. But we thought we could do even more international than that, so we brought in Nathan. Exactly. So Nathan came, especially for the R-ACES project, all the way from the United States, settled in the Netherlands, and seems to me the ideal person to introduce R-ACES to you.
Well, thank you for that, Peter, for that introduction. I'm not sure. I lived in the Netherlands for most of my life, although I did grow up in the United States, and I do have an American passport. Thank you for the introduction, and also with our fine relationship working on the R-ACES project. So also, I want to say that I don't have a lot of experience using Zoom. I usually use Teams, so this is also an exciting new experiment for me. So what is R-ACES? So R-ACES supports industrial sites and business parks in becoming ecoregions. Now, ecoregions, as a thought was new to me a while ago. So we define ecoregions as a geographic area which can be of either small size of around a business park to even as large as a city, and it's an area that exchanges information, but also energy consumption between various stakeholders. And within these ecoregions, we reduce their CO2 emissions by at least 10%, as you see here. Okay, so next slide. And we have developed, this is unlike many of the projects that we've heard already, R-ACES is not an unending project. We are a project, we would have 3 deliverables to give for interested parties. And these practical tools are structuring elements within the project. And the goal of this is to support ecoregions and implement their energy cooperation. So I'll go into slightly more detail in a few sheets, but these are one, a self-assessment tool to gauge the level of maturity at the start of the project of the ecoregions. Second is the legal decision support tool to help drawing up contracts that may be needed between participants within an ecoregion. And thirdly, the energy management platform, which is key to running, settling and optimizing the energy exchanges between companies. Okay. So the first tool, a self-assessment tool, and we've developed these tools, thankfully, with lots of participation from inspiring and wonderful managers, that including the 3 that we've spoken, that have spoken to us today. So from this information we've gathered, we've been able to develop a self-assessment tool. And in this way, each ecoregion can help identify potential energy projects within that region, that ecoregion. And these projects would give best practices and checklists to help them move forward in project identification, initiation, and hopefully eventually implementation. Okay. The second, which is also a very important tool that maybe often is overlooked, is a legal decision support tool. So these are very practical and simple to use decision support tools for management, so that they can use on deciding which framework, legal framework, will be required for an energy cooperation. And lastly, of the 3 tools is the energy management platform, So this is an ICT tool that manages and makes the energy flows transparent. So you know this is a very complex networks, and it would allow energy consumption and production to be allocated in specific installations and within stakeholders and nodes, and would also identify anomalies and opportunities. But we actually go farther than just these three tools. We have other materials that we have developed and we will be developing as part of this project RACES. The first is training materials on how to set up a ecoregion. The second is a serious board game, which is not only physical, because one of the challenges we have been provided due to COVID-19 and Corona is that we need to work more digitally. So this serious board game can also be played online. It's to give insights into how energy can be shared within an ecoregion. I highly recommend it, especially if you have some non-specialists and you would like to give them insights into how ecoregions and energy transfer can be used. And lastly, and certainly not least, we have a large case library of projects which may be giving you some inspiration to start your own ecoregion. Thank you for your attention, and I will give then the presentation back to Peter.
Yep, thanks a lot, Hadan. So, as you've seen, the RACES project is there to be pragmatic, to support ecoregions. So don't hesitate if there are any questions. If you want to get in touch, if you want to ask questions now to Nathan or any of the colleagues, don't hesitate to get in touch with us. We've designed this toolkit. We are setting up those kinds of seminars like we're having today to be able or to support as many people as possible to be able to set up ecoregions. Any questions specifically on RACES or to Nathan at this point? No, it's entirely quiet. Then it's time actually to go into the panel discussion. So the idea here is to go into a bit of a moderated discussion. We've got three propositions, three quotes that we will ask everyone to react to. And based on that, we can go a little bit into discussion to see what you guys are thinking, are feeling about each of the propositions. So as you see on the screen, you can surf to menti.com and then use the code that is mentioned there to get to get a chance to vote, basically. So maybe it would be good here to give you a couple of seconds or minutes, I would say. Take 2 minutes to surf to menti.com, log in with the code, and then we will see the results appearing here, and then we will know whether it works or not. So I would say, please go ahead, surf to menti.com, and then log on. Yes, definitely. And then provide, as we see the first results appearing, and then provide an answer to at least the first statement that heat networks can never be realized without subsidies. polling seems to stabilize. So I guess, I know, still moving. Wait a few seconds. If it's becoming stable, I saw that the first person to respond was really quick, and that he or she indicated, yes, certainly we can. Of course, we can. We cannot realize district heating networks without subsidies. So I don't know who that was. So feel free to speak up, so you can maybe unmute the microphone.
Hi, I think I accidentally filled in the yes, certainly, thinking I think it can be done without subsidy, but an insight that I wanted to share is I think subsidy can help to create better projects in the case where without subsidy you pick something that gets the best return on investment, and I think if you introduce other incentives such as a subsidy to look to connect more buildings that are maybe not ideal for district heating, but that could benefit a lot from district heating, to connect those as well. I think subsidy can help a lot. So to say, to not only do the cherries, but also a little bit more connections.
Yeah, that maybe contrasts a little with the position that 11% of you took, that no companies can do this on their own. So I don't know who represents this position. So that's two people who picked no companies can do this on their own. So if one of you could unmute, we could hear what you think and why you think.
One was me. Okay. No, because currently in Italy we don't have any subsidies to develop district heating network, and still we are, let's say, increasing our installed base, and therefore we are used to that. So in the past we had some subsidies, but currently we have none. Yeah,
and do you, because it's a very different situation from the one that I know. Do you have a gas network, an extensive gas network in Italy?
Yeah.
Then how does that work? Because maybe first, Mogens Michael, you raised your hand.
Yeah, but please go on. I just have an argument in this.
I was wondering how you do it, because one of the points in Belgium, for example, is that we have this extensive gas network, not too much district heating and cooling. And the one argument that's always brought up is that the gas network is there, it's there for cheap, and hardly possible then to really justify the investment in district heating and cooling.
No, the problem is that, so probably is because okay, in Italy our our company footprint is such that also we own the waste to energy unit, and also we own the production. So we are, let's say, vertically integrated. We are not just pure distributors or what. Therefore, okay, we are able to leverage on the production side through the waste to energy unit, through the waste to heat recovery, and therefore, okay, we have access to a, let's say, a lower cost of production compared to gas, and we are able to offer, let's say, better cost compared to gas. And currently, we are, let's say, on a market compared with gas, and we are, let's say, cheaper than gas.
So actually, this concept is, you would say, incompatible with liberalization of an energy market.
No, we are in an open market. Also, we don't have any, let's say, any sort of protection like obligation to be connected to the district heating if district heating is there. So we have no, let's say, we are not treated differently from an open energy source.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
See. Yeah. Morris Michael.
Yeah, I just wanted to point to the fact that I think in most, if not all cases, building a heat network, if we by that mean a network to several consumers, requires a huge investment, and it's an investment that you can only get back in a very long run, like 30 years or something like that. And I think in general, companies are unable to invest in projects with a return time of 30 years or 20 years. So at least in the sense that we understand heat networks in Denmark, I think it would be completely impossible to expect a company to build a heat network on its own. So I was one of the 12 pointing to only if other kinds of support is provided, which is first of all some facilitating the process, but you also, at least if we define heat networks in the sense that I said, you need to have some sort of a structure where a long-term investment can be made by a public or a public-like organization in order to sort of build the heat network. But if you by heat network mean an exchange of heat between two companies, then of course it's a different story.
Yeah. It's, I see that with most people were the same idea, that you need other kinds of support. And only one person indicated that the gas prices need to go up significantly. So who was that one person?
Actually, that was me. I think that in general, if you have, in general, I think that if you just have a strong business case, and if people really can earn money with it, you don't need subsidies. So make the alternative more expensive.
Yeah.
Of course, you would still have the problem of the long investments. That would be sure. So.
Yeah. Okay. Other people want to weigh in on this one? So feel free as well to intervene. We're trying to get a little bit of discussion going here, so there's no need to silently wait until I ask for your specific category or name. So feel free to intervene if you got elements to add, thoughts that you want to share with the people here. Feel free. You can also post them in the chat window, and if not, we will move on to the second question.
I would be really interested to hear how Giels thinks about this for the ArcelorMittal case. Does he think that the case would be possible without subsidies?
Yes, some cases are possible. The low-hanging fruit will be realized with or without subsidies. But as pointed out before, if you want, let's say, a bigger whole, or you want to reach more clients, then subsidies can come in handy, or other help. And in that regard, lowering the gas prices would also be a help. So I think this is not an or question, but and. But I also voted on the last category, so I'm one of the 12. And I can fully agree with the thing Michael Mogan said.
Yeah. So
I wonder if I could just jump in, Peter. I'm also, I must say, I'm one of the 12, but I also maybe a nuance here is the size. Although it seems like the network Luca is talking about was very large, but if you look, if there's only one or two companies going to a community or one general receiver of energy, then possibly that can be done with less or minimal support from the government. But in my perspective, because I work so much on innovation projects and so much with government support for innovation, just the development of new technologies, which then in 10 or 15 years can be implemented, that's very, very commonly done with some kind of subsidy from the government. So that's why I definitely chose the last one.
Okay. Yeah, well, I think in general that that we're seeing, maybe it probably reflects the fact that many people come from countries or regions where district heating is not as developed as some of the cases that we've seen here, of course. Maybe Krista, it would be a good time to move on to the next question. Yep. So this one is really should be interpreted as the focus on individual optimizations eliminates the options for realizing shared heat networks. So is it either individual optimizations or heat networks, or can they exist side by side? So for people who are looking at where to vote, if the screen was still open from the previous vote, the new question would be on the screen. A can indicate your answer there. I see that district heating and cooling enthusiasts are taking it today. So 15 votes so far. Please feel free to continue the voting in the meantime. It is really interesting. There are two people who don't see the connection at all between individual optimizations on a site or connecting to a district heating and cooling system, or to the fact that optimizations on a site, individual optimizations, would preclude a connection to a district heating and cooling system. So I'm really curious to hear what the reasoning behind that is. So for the people who voted D, if you could give some explanation. Don't forget to unmute if you're trying to speak up. So no one of the two people who voted for D, I don't see the connection are available here to give some explanation. In that case, I'm going to ask the one person who voted for yes, this is a problem. So that's option B.
That was me. That was me. To be honest, I chose it because no one else was choosing it. And this is an opinion that I've heard actually several times. So I thought I should represent their opinion. And I've heard that definitely people give the argument that if you have actors in a network that are trying to maximize their own profit or goals, then this can often work. This competition can often work against the optimal network itself. So the actors are trying to optimize their outcome and not the network itself. Still, you have companies trying to, maximize their prices for selling the heat. There will be companies who will try to minimizing the costs of heat and also the network, the number of pipes, the number of connections. So that's what I've heard in the past.
Yeah, and who is the person who voted A? Yes, indeed, but it's a good thing. So that's still someone who was on mute. So who voted for A? I wonder, are we having technical problems here? If you voted A, please unmute. Don't forget to unmute and share your reasoning behind the choice that you made here. It's still eerily silent.
I think everybody in C is just trying to get in as quickly as possible.
Yeah, probably. Then if you're not managing to hear from the people who voted A or D, it's an open question to the audience, the floor here. Anyone who wants to weigh in on this topic of individual optimizations versus district heating and cooling?
So it's really interesting, I think, because so this afternoon I just had a meeting with the industrial partners in the Netherlands, where we discussed heat integration solutions for industry. And there a similar question was raised, but then people actually said during the meeting, even if we have all the potential to focus on optimization of heat use within a company, there will be so much waste heat left anyways that we can still use it for district heating networks. So even if you have optimization within companies, some in one way or the other, there will be waste heat. There will be some waste heat anyways, a lot actually, that can be used for district heating networks.
Yeah, that's definitely what we saw in Denmark as well.
Yeah, I was going to say something like that. You can never optimize the processes so that you won't have excess heat in industrial production or even in data centers, as you mentioned before. I think about 90% of the energy is transformed into heat, which is a general thermodynamic rule. So there will always be excess heat. The fact is that many of the industries, of course, their core business is not to produce heat, but to produce all kinds of things, whether it's data or it's steel or it's plastics or whatever it is. So this is also why I voted for the option on you need some facilitation in the previous question. We have been for several years, maybe 5-10 years, worked on surplus heat from minor companies in Fyn, in the area where I live. And I was in charge of that. And we've talked to many companies. And it's also always, at least in Denmark, it's always a persuasion of the company, because it's to some extent it's a little hustle for them, because it's not their core business, and they are striving to be competitive in their business. So you, even with the favorable framework conditions we have in Denmark, you have to persuade them and you have to assist them, for instance, in making the detailed description of what would the business case look like, what are the technologies, what is the investment, how much heat can be extracted from this, how much will the local district heat company be able to buy it for, and what would the payback time be of the investment, who would do the investment. So all of these questions you really have to solve for them before you can persuade them to go into it. And even then, and even in Denmark, you sometimes can't even persuade them. I still have one company which has so much excess heat in a specific place that they can heat up the whole town neighbor to them. And they can, at the same time, increase their production by 10%. Because they are relying on getting their heat away. And still and we've worked on this business case for at least 3 or 4 or 5 years. We've been in a dialogue with that on and off. It's still not realized.
Well,
and this is even in Denmark. And you even have you have to. I think you have to. Our experience is you have to couple the business case with the climate agenda. And sort of that kind of framing, and maybe even the SDGs, and then you have to also of course couple the discussion very closely with the local district heating or other consumers of the heat. And I agree very much with the first speaker who said that to build this governance platform and build this trust between the stakeholders is essential. I'm so agreeing with you on this.
Yeah, let's write that one down. That's that's support from Denmark in that one. Okay, maybe this is time to go to the third and final question that we got for today. I think it was the third one, the final one. That's an open question. So this time you will not see radio buttons to click, but a small text box in which you can write down what, according to you, what the biggest obstacle to realizing district heating networks would be. So feel free to write it down. Just shorthand is enough, and whatever you write down will appear on the screen here. I see a lot of topics coming in now on fairness, trust, building an alliance, common goals. But we're recording this session anyhow, but this could be an interesting screen to share, just keeping the backs of our heads even after the end of this session. So we see topics coming in, and they started clearly from the more technical side of things. We've got huge investments, we got heat losses. And of course, they are very important there as well. But we seem to be moving in the direction of trust and governance, I would say, that would also be important. People who want to comment on what you can see on the screen now?
Peter, I maybe want to add something on the previous question. That's allowed.
Go ahead, definitely.
I think I was confronted with the opposite situation, in which a company gives away a bit of its private or personal efficiency for the network. Of course, not for free, but ArcelorMittal has its own internal steam network, and they offer this as a backup when the installation has to be interrupted, for instance. The steam network will be the backup. So in this sense, they will lose a bit of their internal efficiency for a collective purpose in a way. And the cost, of course, is their gas price or their steam price. So it's linked to the gas price. But I think this is also an idea that you can play around with installations, and you might be able to discuss this as an opening for a collective network.
And was that because you feel they are being forced by regulation to do something about their CO2, that they are willing to think about those kinds of things? Or are there other reasons for them being so generous with their steam?
Yeah, they have to be able to make those guarantees. And of course, CO2, they are part of the emission trading system. And by delivering heat out of their borders, they can, I think, regain certificates for CO2. So of course that plays, but I think it's just goodwill from them to make it happen, because both ArcelorMittal and the public authorities benefit from the network. So that's also my comment on question 3. I think what we're doing with the district heating network is building a cake, and if not everyone gets its equal share, both the consumers, industrial consumers, and the producers of the heat, and then finally also the company that will put it in the ground and invest in the installations, they all need their share, and in the end, I think it's best to have open communication about this and try to keep it as equal as possible.
Definitely. I'm just I'm looking at the comments, looking at the screen here, and looking ultimately at the clock as well. So we're approaching 5 p.m., which means the end of the session, the end of the working day for most people, I guess. So I'm going to take this occasion to round up here. Thanks a lot for the contributions, first of all, to the speakers, of course, to some of the insights that were shared, even if it's a bit more difficult to have a proper discussion via digital means than we can meet in person. But I think it was very interesting. We've been pointed to different issues that you can encounter when you develop district heating and cooling systems, especially if they use waste heat. Some of us are more advanced, as in Italy or Denmark. Others are really trying to get their foot between the door. That's, for example, in Belgium. But still, there's a lot of common issues that we can take from that, and the issues that, or the tips I would say that that I gathered here are that it is possible to build a business case. Ultimately, it has been proven to be possible, but you need to leverage all the resources from production all the way over distribution, even to consumption of the heat. I also understood that it becomes so boring in the end that most people simply forget about a district heating and cooling system, which would, I think, be the ideal, of course, if it's so normal, if it's so natural that nobody even thinks it worthy of a thought, then it would be great. And finally, of course, the entire issue about trust and governance and being able to build an entire team of parties that are willing to be on the same page is really essential to making it happen. So with that, I think we've reached the end of this session. Thanks again for your participation, and we will see each other again in September this year for the follow-up session, where we will be talking not just about district heating and cooling system, but really about some cases of really innovative and sustainable energy systems on in ecoregions on several industrial sites. Thank you and bye-bye.